Hello everybody, and welcome to the second episode in my series on art styles. Today we are going to be talking about taking those lines from the first episode and turning them into shapes. So, in talking about these shapes, I feel a way to generalize the approach in your style will come from part of these two camps, but there's a spectrum in between on how much you use them, and that is geometric shapes and then natural forms. One of the biggest differences is how much your audience can resonate with shape theory and how fast your audience can recognize a indicator from these shapes that they then see inside the character and how well you portray that. So using more geometric shapes as a base for your art style is a very quick and solid way for people to figure out emotional responses that I'll explain more in a second with the shape theory stuff. But you can also use that as a baseline to get those ideas and then put on a more natural form as the finished product. Using more natural forms, though, give you a less direct and easy response, but you have different signifiers in that shape due to what it actually is in real life. Close approximation to real life in the forms associated with it. So now that I've talked around the idea of shape theory, I will now discuss the details of what shape theory is. So for circles or any of the more rounder or curved shapes, it's going to give you a sense of calm or ease to it. It's going to signify some level of safety. Now for anything that is a square, cube, blocky, these things usually indicate more of a sturdy, strong, or in a lot of character designs, it'll make them feel a lot more capable or dependable. So the last one is actually triangles or anything that has more of a pointy corner to it. These are usually indicators of threatening or dangerous, possibly even sinister characters. So one of the ways you can use the shape theory in order to get a stronger idea of what kind of your shape value is for your overall object or character is to use a silhouette. So a silhouette basically is the outer edge of whatever your character object is and the kind of shapes that it makes from just that. Usually you want to, for a solid silhouette for at least posing, is to have enough of your limbs and stuff moved out of the way from being cluttered together to make one just blob, to have its like arms out, so you can tell what these shapes are apart from having all the detail in it. So the silhouette is more of a overarching guide to your audience on what kind of emotions you're going to put on it first. Like, it's the first reactions. It should be your major understanding of that character. And then after that, there are the details and the little other shapes inside that you can give extra life and other expressions that character will have that you can put onto your... So with all these little details or whatnot, you will want to decide how much of it you want to detail out or how much you want to kind of clump together into one bigger kind of shape, and be aware of those kinds of things, like especially with hair and brushes and sometimes a lot of like chain and stuff like that, like a lot of little things put together. You can just kind of decide for your style how much detailing you want to do, and I'll go into detailing I think in another video, but I wanted to at least say a thing about putting them into one shape in this video. Like, that's a good idea to do for styles. So for a pretty easy example I could think of, at least for people in the US, you could use an octagon with an outline around it of another octagon. Without color or text, usually will symbol a stop sign. And if you had the text, obviously this is more obvious and more direct. But this shape and this form signifies to people that there is a need to stop. There is something that should block their path, something like that. And you can use this throughout. So with this double octagon, there is this kind of stopping force behind them. Now you could use it just like that, or you can use it in a metaphorical sense of kind of a stop in their kind of personality. There's a kind of blockage there. But you can use this for any number of different symbols that's out in the world that you can implant into characters or images, settings. So, along with these general shapes, which you can use as subtly as you want within your piece to kind of tweak it a little bit here and there for certain aspects or things you want to elicit from your audience, you can also go with a more specific shape, which generally used is represented as like kind of a symbol. Instead of a broad emotion, it's more a very specific idea encapsulated in that object. So for this next part, we're going to talk again about line, even though this is the shape video, before going into some examples. That's usually when you just don't have a section of it that's fully blocked in with a line, and you're instead using no lines or some other kind of line work to fill in that gap, usually to show kind of emotion. Like there's different ways in order to use the kind of line work we were talking about before in order to either kind of stretch the image in some way for that, or some of the times you can have no line and it's kind of trying to show that they're missing a lot of the line in order to show that there is either they're super close together or they're like melding together in some way. You're like forming some kind of like bond with each other, something like that. And you can use either a very easy line, like different types of line works in order to kind of make them into one solid shape. And there's different ways you can go about kind of showing that in your work. So if you haven't been able to tell from what I've been drawing in the background, it is the three main characters of the Legend of Zelda games kind of redesigned a bit. And I wanted to do this in order to kind of show off like a little bit of that, how you put these kind of shapes together in order to kind of formulate different themes, aspects, and designs. So for our first character that I'm going to discuss about like the process behind it is going to be Zelda herself. She has the aspect of wisdom, which is her underlying theme and tone. And for that, there's a lot of calmness, caring, more nice is another way to put it. And for her, a lot of extra features were given from her eyes, having those lashes actually curve around, trying to make more decisions on putting these in. The lips, like actually having marks for them, is part of the style. You can choose to choose to do it. And for different reasons, you can add these things and it will help your style change. Like for this one, it smooths it over, like with the rest of her head, the extra curves in her hair, the shoulders being slumped down, unlike the other ones, which are kind of angled, the bottom to all of these frill type pieces of fabric, and a lot of these all give that sense of, pleasantry. Also, with that being said, she is also a princess, and with that, I just gave her little features that were ideally supposed to be more solid, but with parts of the Triforce in the jewelry. So these triangle shapes plus the curtain or veil looking frills I wanted to give her dress combined together to let the audience kind of piece together that there's something else going on, being that she disguises herself as an assassin known as Sheik. And then also, as part of Icon for Legend of Zelda as a series, the Triforce, I put that on her so you know. Another kind of symbol I wanted to give for Zelda was the frilly parts. They're supposed to also look like curtains or veils to add to this kind of mysterious atmosphere to her. I wanted those parts and the more royal parts to be the most busy out of them, and most of the other parts were kind of stay more simple or less detailed. And so for our second character, it's actually going to be the less detailed of the three, and that is going to be Link, the protagonist of the game, generally speaking. And he will be built upon in a bunch of squares because his aspect is courage, and So with courage, you want to have it to where he isn't going to waver in the face of danger in the unknown through the adventure of the game, getting to the end, defeating evil. And with that, there is more to it than that. He has to fight the evil or fight whatever's in his path in order to get to the end. So there's that sense of danger. So in his hat and a little of the shapes in his face, and also with the fact that usually he will have a sword, which is on his back in the picture I drew, but it's made up of mostly squares, a big square, and a few triangles here and there. So to give that sense of he's a danger to those he's going to fight. He also normally would have a shield, but I didn't draw one here, and those are normally circles, sometimes squares for more of a tower shield, more to just stop things generally. And I also gave his pouch being more of a circle shape, and that's for more of like a more contemplative like memory thing. It's usually what your inventory would be coming from, I guess. For our third character, this is Ganondorf. He's a ruler. He has the Triforce element of power. He is also the primary villain for the series. And so with these things in mind, I gave him mostly triangle shapes with some square shapes here and there to help like fortify his demeanor and his resolve. For a lot of it, I wanted the shape of his body, and especially with the broad shoulders, to kind of have something narrow down into that kind of point to give it a very distinct angle and point to it so that it looks more threatening. He looks dangerous. His arms have plates for squares, same with his shoulders. There are the triangle parts or spikes to the edges of his skirt. Also onto the shoes or boots, I wanted to give multiple different angled points. On his head, his hair kind of comes out into spikes. His eyes are very angled. His eyebrows are very large and blocky, again to make him more stern. His beard's pointy. The crown he has, which I thought was really important, and I actually looked up reference for this, which I thought was a really good example of this. It's a lot of these spikes or triangle pieces on top of small little rods with squares on them, which I thought was really interesting to have like those kind of motifs directly there onto this kind of focal point, this regal piece of his costume design. For the next part, I have these three examples of Link's versions of Link's head, all using these combinations of the basic shapes we were talking about earlier, where they all have a combination, obviously a combination of emotions behind them, and this alters the style pretty drastically between them, where the way you shape different objects or parts of someone's face, you can use this even for regular objects and stuff like that, where they all take a different kind of life to them when you do this. And even when you're doing this combination of shapes, it's actually not specific as the symbols I mentioned earlier after the shapes, where those will have a very direct reaction you get from that kind of object that you're thinking about from another experience or from real life or something. Instead, it will have a little bit of a range to them on emotions, but not quite as broad as before. It narrows it down quite significantly to the ones that are kind of shared. Sometimes these will add together to mix these kind of emotions, or sometimes it'll strengthen an element or an aspect that is closely shared between the two that you'll want to think about, like with the middle one, like a softness with this kind of possibility of danger with it being at a point for the teardrop water drop thing. So having these combinations of shapes, or knowing and using a lot of the more specifics of them, really it's more about the use of a point or something sharp to something kind of flat, blocky, or something round or soft. Like, these things also translate into a more natural style as well, and knowing where those are and how to use them properly at places where you're your subject will allow to bring out certain aspects of it that you want to tell your audience to get them to kind of understand that piece and have a emotional resonance with it. So with that first video for lines I did for this series, I just wanted to get it out there. I was really unsure with what to do for it, but I've been talking a lot with my buds. You can find them on my channel page, but they gave me a lot of feedback and stuff to kind of produce a better quality video, and I really appreciate that. And if you like this video, I would appreciate a like. It lets at least me know that you're doing well, helps with the algorithm and stuff, but I'm kind of like whatever on that. And if you want to see more of this, or I do covers and some other design stuff, please subscribe. That would be awesome. And I hope you have a great day, and that'll wrap it up for this video. Thanks everybody. Bye-bye. Hello everybody, and welcome to